All right. Welcome to today's edition of Coaches with Coachilly. I did not grab my coffee. I have healthy water with me today. However, I have a fabulous guest with me. His name is Kris Kelso. He's also the author of a phenomenal book called Overcoming the Impostor. And I will not even further my introduction here. I'll have him right on to the show. He added onto the show. Hi, Kris. How are
Hey,
you?
good morning. I'm doing
Morning.
great. How are you today?
Pretty good, yeah. After we had a little bit of
Awesome.
a hiccup this morning technology-wise, but otherwise, great. I'm really excited to have you here today.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So, Kris, we'll talk, usually I have my guests come here to talk about what inspired them to get into coaching, what they've learned, just things to impart
Yeah.
with other people who may be looking to start a coaching business or have started and want to glean information from their peers who are successful already, like you are. What inspired you to start coaching?
Well, so I've been an entrepreneur twice. I've started two different companies. And during that time, I benefited from working with several different executive coaches. And they really challenged me, inspired me, held me accountable, held up my arms when I was struggling, and just provided a lot of support. And I learned a ton through that process. And so I saw firsthand the value of coaching. And when I left my second business and was, exploring what I wanted to do next, I started to have some interest from other entrepreneurs in coaching them and looking for that same kind of support. And because I knew the power of it and had experienced it firsthand and really believed that everyone should have a coach, it was a very natural fit for me to transition into coaching. And so I spent 18 months or so doing some training with the Professional Christian Coaching Institute and got certified with the ICF and started taking on coaching clients. And it has been so much fun. I mean, probably the most enjoyable time in my career working with business owners and executives across a wide range of businesses.
Yeah, oh, that's great. So you partially answered my next question. What was your upbringing in coaching? But what I would like to know too, because I don't think we often talk about this, right? When we do the baby steps in the beginning, like we get certified and trained and certified, and
Yeah.
we've already had all this experience on our backs, right? You certainly had. And then you start getting your first clients, and usually we don't get our target clients, our ideal clients right away.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that?
I like many coaches, I had to learn through trial and error what kind of clients were a great fit for me. And some of that was because, early on, you just kind of want to take on any clients you can get and get some experience and begin to build your business. And some of that was because I didn't know what I wanted to work with, who I wanted to work with exactly, and where I would be a great fit. And so, just one example, I'm a somewhat methodical, deliberative thinker, and I take time to process things. And I've discovered that when I take on a client who's a very driven, hard charging, fast moving, quick decision maker, they move faster than I do in some cases. Now, that can be valuable because I can help them to slow down and think through some things, but it can also be frustrating sometimes because if the client feels like I'm holding them back or I can't keep up as a coach, then they're not getting a great experience. On the other hand, I've had some great experiences with other more deliberative and thoughtful clients. And I've even had some much more type A driven coaches refer clients to me because they felt like they couldn't get the client to move quick enough and couldn't draw out of them what they needed to. And then they would refer the client to me and I would be able to we'd do great work together because I have the patience to take the time and allow the space for that client to really think and deliberate and process like they need to. So there's a number of different factors, but that's one example of where I had to learn through some trial and error how personality fit make someone a great candidate or maybe not so great a candidate for my coaching. Doesn't mean they're not a candidate for coaching. It just means they need a different style of coach. And finding those lines and learning how to recognize those signs has helped me a lot.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'm glad you're passing that on. What a gem. Now, if you looked back, what would you have done differently?
You know, there's obviously a lot that I've learned in the process, and some of the things that you learn both in developing as a coach and in just building a new business. This now is my sort of third company, my third business of growing my coaching and speaking and my writing and the things that the content that I'm creating. You learn a lot by experimenting, by trial and error. But there's also some data that you can get that often people don't know is available. And so one tip for coaches that I'll give that I wish I had known on day one, fortunately, I figured it out a couple of years in. A friend of mine, actually, a colleague, a guy that I've known for years who does research on customer service data and interactions with customers for some really, really large companies. He did an analysis for a coaching company, and he didn't tell me what company it was, but it's a company that does somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 million a year in coaching. So they have a bunch of coaches and, probably some large corporate clients and are doing a large volume of coaching. And he said that based on their analysis of how people buy coaching, how people sign up for coaching, they discovered that most people hire a coach after 3 meaningful encounters where you solve a problem or help them solve a problem. Now, a meaningful encounter can be an article that you wrote that they read. It can be that they heard you speak somewhere, or it can be a one-on-one conversation that they've had, or, there's a number of different ways someone can engage with you. But the main point of that is that few people hire a coach after one interaction. It's after several. It's after a repeat, because essentially what they're buying is consistent production, consistent value. They're buying that every time I have an interaction here, I get something great out of it, and I want to keep that going. So I want to keep interacting. I want to sign up. I want to continue to work together. And so once I learned that from my friend, and that was a gem that he shared with me, I have done a couple of things. One is that I've been really intentional about creating and delivering content on a regular basis. I started writing more. I started speaking more. I started trying to engage on social media and provide, not just sales pitch, not just, hey, here's what I do and do you want to hire me, but really provide value to people, help people, even if they're not my clients yet. Yeah. Secondly, when I meet somebody who's interested in coaching or who might be a prospect for coaching, I don't try to sell them on the first conversation. The goal of the first conversation is to help them to provide some value, to help them see something in a new way or help them solve a problem that they have, and then hopefully to create an opportunity for the next encounter. And if I do that consistently, clients will eventually say, man, I'd like to do this on a regular basis. This is really valuable. How can we formalize this relationship and work together on an ongoing basis? So learning that has changed the way I sell, and it has changed the way I think about providing value to people as a coach.
Yeah, that really resonates. I can tell you this, I have more recently really had a big learning in that. I increased my time that I spent with clients, right? In the beginning, it was like this 20-minute, half-hour discovery call. I'm long done with this. That's not, because it doesn't allow to really get to know somebody. And what am I doing? Am I trying to sell or trying to add value and really show what coaching will do and understanding the client, right? We're trying to learn the client, right? This is a person that is a whole person with a lot of needs, right? That have to be uncovered. And so I'm doing more of that. But then also with the newsletter, I had at one point thought about abandoning my newsletter, and then I shifted it. But instead of talking just about something, thinking about, okay, how will it create a shift in somebody else that's reading this? Or how could I add
Yes.
value into this, right? How can I
Yes.
maybe share resources that they may not be available of, but to me, those resources are natural because, those are my go-to, so I can share them with others. And so that changed the game too, because like you said, right, there are multiple touch points. It's not just, we don't have to have 3 discovery calls, at 2 hours each.
Yeah.
That's not needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think of it like if you walk around a food court in a shopping mall, and you remember shopping malls? Remember when we used to be able to get to shop in person and be with other people?
It's not like a
If
zoo,
you walk
right?
around, there's a big difference between a restaurant handing out flyers and a restaurant handing out samples. Right? You're a lot more likely to buy when you get that sample and you get a taste of what you're actually going to get than if they're just handing you a sales pitch. Here's what we have to offer. Here's what we have to offer. Here's what you can buy from us. So I think about, interacting with potential clients or people that are just exploring and interested in coaching as I need to give them a taste, not a sales pitch, not a flyer, a sample.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you with that. But it takes time to experiment with that, right? And to experience that for yourself, because I know people have told me that in the very beginning and I didn't trust it. I'm thinking, no, that giving away all the goodies.
Right.
Right. I'm not thinking that there's an abundance where that came from. Right. And we have to trust that, I think, that there's more. Yeah. We don't run out because we have one coaching session.
Yeah. Well, and the truth is, if you can solve someone's problem in one session or one, 20 or 30-minute conversation, if you can give them everything they need in that period of time, then they don't need to sign up for coaching. You don't want to try to build a long-term relationship with someone who only needs a very finite thing, but very few people only have one issue or only have one challenge or only need help with one very simple finite thing. So by just offering to help and provide some value right out of the gate, you're not giving away the goodies. You're showing them what's possible and enticing them to want more.
Yeah, I agree. And if somebody really only needed one session and you fix their problem there, that's the best advocate for you,
Right.
Go to him, go to her. Like they can help you and they will do it quickly. And they're not going to just take your money and run. They'll deliver value even before they do. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great point.
So, great. So do you have a funny or endearing story from coaching?
A funny or endearing story? Well, I have one client who's been with me for a long time, and business owner, and he often does a debrief with his wife after we coach, and he told me not too long ago that there was a point where, particularly during COVID, he was looking at cutting expenses and how do we slim down and be conservative, and his wife said, "You're not going to stop working with Kris, are you? You can't do that no matter what. You can't stop that," because she recognized the value. And so I've never even met his wife, but I have a fan in his wife because of the great work that we've been able to do together and the progress that he's made. And she's really seen the difference and felt that positive effect. So that was really cool to hear.
Oh, that's really cool. Wow, phenomenal. What would be something, to kind of, it's a closing question, but we're not really at the end of our talk. I still want to talk about your book, but I would like to hear from you as we build out Coachilly, and I'm trying to look for more volunteers to help build a good community here. Something that you wish we would add as content, things we would talk about, that is transparent, really hands-on. I'm not trying to do, thoughtful Tuesdays, something that's soft and scratching the surface, but something that really gets down to business of the hardships that we're facing. We want to be open to really talk about those things vulnerably. What would you wish to have added to that?
Well, you mentioned the book, and I would say that imposter syndrome is one of those topics that I think coaches really need to be aware of and talking about openly for two reasons. One is because coaches often experience imposter syndrome, and in particular, when they take on clients that may be more successful than they are by whatever standards you might measure success. They may be coaching people that have experience that the coach personally doesn't have. I've run 2 companies, but I have now coached owners of companies that are 20 times as big as any company I've ever run myself. And so if I'm not aware of the coach's role and the difference between just being a mentor with experience, sharing my experience, and being a coach, I could fall into imposter syndrome, feeling like, okay, I'm not worthy to be coaching this person. I'm not qualified to be working with this executive that has this really large company that's out of my league, so to speak, from my own personal experience. So a lot of coaches will experience imposter syndrome, especially in the early stages of getting their business off the ground and trying to go out and sell themselves. Maybe it's the first time they're, sort of promoting and selling themselves as a helper. But aside from that, even if a coach isn't experiencing imposter syndrome themselves, they're very likely to encounter it in their clients. Some studies suggest that up to 70 or even 80% of the population experiences imposter syndrome at some point in their career. And I think coaches are uniquely positioned to identify it and recognize it and call it out, and then help a client work their way through it and overcome that feeling of being a fraud, of being an imposter, of being in over their head.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I want to talk more about your book. I'll take note of this. I think this is a great topic to address down the line, and maybe you come back and join us again.
Yes.
So when I think I could guess what inspired you to start writing this book, but share with us, if you will.
Yeah, really quickly, just for anybody who's watching who's not familiar with imposter syndrome, it's a psychological term that was coined in the 1970s, and it refers to the tendency of many people, it turns out, to systematically doubt their own accomplishments and to feel like maybe they're not really what everyone seems to think that they are. What happens is we overvalue other people's success, and we say, well, that entrepreneur or that coach or that person, they seem to really know what they're doing and they have it all together, and they're savvy and smart and educated, and they make a lot of great decisions. Whereas my success has involved a lot of luck and timing, and boy, I sure have made a lot of mistakes along the way and just somehow managed to overcome and figure things out. And I've gotten ahead to some degree because of people I know or opportunities that were presented to me. And boy, there's a lot of ways that, my mistakes could have held me back. And the truth is that everybody has those experiences. Everybody has those flaws. Everybody has a combination of successes and failures, not just success after success after success. But we don't always see it in other people as clearly as we see it in ourselves. And so imposter syndrome is this feeling that at some point, I'm afraid that somebody might figure out that I'm not what everyone thinks I am, that I'm just making it up as I go, that I'm maybe a bit of a fraud. And that if that happens, it's going to come crumbling down around me. I'm going to be exposed as an imposter. And not everyone feels it quite that strongly and acutely, but many of us struggle with self-doubt. And so I experienced imposter syndrome absolutely as an entrepreneur, running 2 different companies, trying a lot of new things, learning on the fly, building teams and growing, hiring people that were more experienced than I was, that were more educated than I was. And when I first learned about imposter syndrome years into my entrepreneurial career, it was like a light bulb went off. It was such an eye opener, and it was really a relief to know that it wasn't just me, that this is a thing, that lots of people experience it, and that so much of it is just a mind game in our head, and that voice of that inner critic that was telling me I wasn't worthy, A, it's very common, but B, it's not real. There's nothing really there. It's just self-doubt. And so understanding that helped me a lot. And then as I began to talk with some of my clients as a coach and with just other entrepreneurs in my community, the people that I know, I began to realize that it's a very common and very prevalent challenge that people face, and that most people don't recognize it fully, don't know what it is, and don't realize how common it is. And so they think they're the only ones. So I wrote the book to sort of, rip the covers off of this phenomenon, and particularly for entrepreneurs, for innovators, for people that are pushing the boundaries, to help them realize that it's actually more prevalent among high achievers. It's actually more common among people that are pushing themselves, that are stretching and growing. And so it's in some ways a sign that you're doing good things. It's a sign that you're taking big risks. It's a sign that you're making bold choices. And you don't have to see it entirely as a negative. You do have to recognize it and manage it to get those feelings under control, and to use that energy for good rather than allowing it to hold you back and stifle you. So I wrote the book out of my own experience and from stories of dozens of entrepreneurs that I've interviewed and worked with and talked to over the years. And from speaking engagements and articles I've written, I've just collected a lot of great information and added to that a ton of research that I've done, and wrote this book during a pandemic in 2020 and published it in January of 2021. And it's been phenomenally received. I've been so gratified by all the great feedback and comments that I've gotten from people who've read it and said, this is just transformational and so helpful.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I got the book when, it came out, or shortly after, I should say, because you released it in January or February. And I think
yes,
I had gotten it like maybe in March or April, maybe April. And so, but yeah, it has benefited me, and I've already sent it to my clients.
Oh, I appreciate that so much.
Yeah.
It's been awesome to hear the feedback, because in particular, I wrote this book to and about entrepreneurs, largely because that's sort of my tribe and that's the world that I've been in. But since it's been released, I have heard from fighter pilots and school teachers and scientists and corporate executives and just people from all walks of life and lots of different backgrounds and scenarios who have told me that this work has really resonated. It's helped them think differently and see the world differently. I've heard stories of people, after reading the book, finally going after that job that they thought they were unqualified for and getting it, and now leaning into great opportunities that they never would have dreamed of. So that's been just immensely gratifying to know that I've had that kind of effect and I've been able to help people in that way.
Yeah, that's gratifying, because that's impact, right? That's what we want
Yes.
to leave in this world. We want to, change the world a bit at a time, or one book at a time, maybe in this case.
And it's a lot more impact than I can have working one-on-one. There's only so many people I can coach personally. Mm-hmm. And so, by putting in the work to write a book, I've been able to have a much more widespread impact. And again, it's just so gratifying to hear those stories from people who can't hire me, but they can sort of hire a little piece of me by buying that book.
Oh, that's great to pass on to other coaches too, right? If you want to expand your reach and you have something to say, and you have, granted, right, you have to have carved out your niche, like understand the market you're serving, understand what you have to say, right? When you understand that, then this is a way to reach further. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
that's a little piece of Kris. That's actually a big piece of you, because, if people could just get to where they need to be by reading a book or by taking a course, right? On my website, I state information isn't transformation, right? It takes more than just reading a book normally.
You have to do something with it.
And a book can be very impactful. And if we really also, right, if we assess on how we read a book, there's an art to that too, right? Some people just breeze through it, or if you actually read a book methodically, or systematically, and you try to apply it directly, then you may be able to get away with the book and not Kris. Right. So there's still if there's something bigger to overcome, still value in working with you. But it's great to have a touch point. Like you said earlier, right? You have that touch point with your clients. You're giving away a lot of information that would otherwise be handled in the session if they want to work through that, they can. Now, one thing that I saw, that really stood out to me in the book, that reminded me of what we do in our coaching sessions, our good coaching questions that are causing this reflection, the brain to start, or the heart to start thinking, hopefully both. And, thinking of this, I can understand how it helps the reader, as in your potential client, right? Or anybody, like any owner or any leader who's reading this.
Yeah.
But how would it, how do you think a coach could put this to use in the work with their clients?
Yeah, well, actually, I have just recently started a group coaching program where I take people through the book one chapter at a time, and we meet together to have a open discussion about each chapter of the book. And as you pointed out, in the book, every chapter ends with a set of questions that essentially are asking, what are you going to do with this information? How are you going to change the way you think, the way you act? How are you going to respond to what you've learned? Because as you've said, if you don't do anything differently after you read a book, it's just entertainment. You've just taken a few hours to escape from your day-to-day life and read something. But unless you turn around and do something differently, it's not really going to have an effect on you. So the questions are about, what are you going to do differently? How are you going to respond? And so I'm in the process of taking a group of people, and we'll do some more groups. We'll probably launch a second group here pretty soon. But I've also had other coaches and other people say, I'm going to take this book and create a group like that on my own. I'm going to take my clients through this. I've got companies that are having their entire staff read this book and then do a group discussion together about imposter syndrome and self-doubt and how they recognize and counteract that in their workplace. So it's a really coach-friendly book to give you lots of simple models and concepts to work through with a client, and a lot of great questions to ask when you recognize imposter syndrome at work in somebody, and help them to tease it out, to call it out and recognize it, and begin to counteract those negative thoughts.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Kris. And we're coming to the end of our conversation today. I hope I can have you as a guest here again. But you've taught me a lot. I think the audience has a lot to learn from you. We haven't even dug as deep as we possibly could, with all of the content that's in there. The one thing I have taken away is that I can pride myself in having imposter syndrome, because I'm an A-type personality. I'm pushing and achieving, so I guess I can wear it with a level of pride. I have imposter syndrome.
It is a sign that you're doing great things, and as long as you don't let it dominate you and hold you back, it's not a bad thing. It can actually be a good thing, and even be a signal of when you're pushing yourself the most, which means good things are on the horizon.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you, Kris. I really enjoyed this talk, and hope I get to talk to you soon.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it as well, and I'd be glad to come back sometime. This has been a lot of fun.
Sounds great.